panelists who have taken time out of extremely busy days to be with us. The first panelist I'd like to introduce is Sarah Bernard, who I've known for several years. She is a native of St. Louis, got her undergraduate degree in music and French, which aren't very related to real estate, but she has done a huge job in building her business as an executive MBA from WashU, lives in Clayton with, I know she's had 3 children who are probably adults at this point. Realtor since 2014, thriving business, did 22 million last year, and year to date is 14 million. She has a great background in business, got a team that works with her. She loves to be in this business. Her why is really grounded in her love of learning and a desire to do things in a creative way. She's a natural entrepreneur. Sarah, if you'd like to add to that, please do so.
Thank you so much, Barry, for having me today. I don't have a whole lot to add. My kids are not fully adults. They're in, 2 are, well, one just graduated from college and she's got a job, which is a really good thing. And one still in college, and one I would call an adult at 24. So, and we just moved to Chesterfield. So we're no longer in Clayton. So that's a little bit of an update. And
Wow.
Totally a pandemic move, which I found a lot of people are doing. They need more space. So that's what we did. And, but yeah, our year is going well and love the business. And you're absolutely right. Music and French has little to do with real estate, but every now and then it helps out. So
that's nice. Well, you can certainly relate to people on a broad basis. Our next panelist is Chad Wilson, who is a really successful realtor in primarily the St. Charles market. He has been a realtor in Missouri since 2009. He was raised in St. Charles and is raising his 4 daughters along with his wife there. He's not raising his wife, but he and his wife are raising their 4 daughters. He's been an air traffic controller, which, boy, you've got to be nimble and well-trained and calm to do that. He spent nearly 30 years with the FAA and retired just last year. And of note also is that he spent 27 years in the Air National Guard with deployments to Hungary, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iraq. So we salute you and thank you for your service in that regard. He did 71 million in sales last year, which is huge. And he's been ranked by a number of national organizations as having that kind of a track record. Our panelist, last but not least, someone we've had also on the panels before, along with Sarah, and that is Tom Basler of the Krause Basler Network. They're with Keller Williams, as is Chad. Different offices, but Krause Basler Network finished with 416 families being served in 2019 and sales volume of 137 million. And I know you've got a team because that's a huge volume for any 1 or 2 people to do. So he got into real estate in 1993 with Remax Real Estate. And then he switched over in 2013 to Keller Williams and became an agent with Keller Williams. And now is joined with Don Krause. About the same time you moved to Keller Williams, or shortly thereafter. You've got 2 daughters, and you live in Ellisville. You're a runner and a reader, and you've been in a triathlon, which is a note really amazing to me. So that's, Tom, would you like to add to that?
No, that's pretty much it, Barry. Yeah, I've been doing this 27 years now, and Dawn and I, October 1st will be our 5th year anniversary forming the Krause Basler Network.
That's outstanding. Well, you have a lot of impact on the market. So we're going to break this down into sections. And our first section is going to be the next 6 months. You know, where is the market? I think many of us are astonished that the market is kind of in the situation that it's in. Many people, I think, thought it was going to collapse with the COVID-19 impact and a recession. And certainly in St. Louis, it really hasn't collapsed. There's demand. And at this point, we don't really have, from what I can tell, a market that is, at least in certain segments, under a lot of negative pressure. But I'm not the expert in the sense that I've got 3 people on this panel who know a whole lot more than I do. And by the way, my background, I just didn't touch on that, is 52 years in real estate, most of that time as a commercial real estate developer. And then since 2005, more interested in residential as I moved to St. Louis and became a real estate broker here. So I'm more of the analyst and the coordinator on this panel. And so I'd like to ask the first question to the panel. What's going on with the demand? Why is there such demand still when we've got a recession and people are being laid off? Who'd like to start on that?
I can start.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting. I think what we've seen is that the demand has been a little bit later in the year, where we would have seen a really big push in March and April. It got pushed into May and June. So we're still feeling the effects of that. So our spring market is there. At first, when the pandemic started, we had the stay-at-home orders. We didn't really know how to react as realtors, and our clients didn't know. You know, those of us who had clients with homes on the market at the time, I'm sure we all got those same phone calls. What should I do? Should I take it off? Should I leave it on? My advice to my clients at the time was leave your homes there. You know, you never know when there might be a buyer, and if your home is not on the market, no one's going to know it won't be available to purchase. So I think for the most part, all of us here and probably most in the audience have kind of stayed the course and just kept doing business as usual. And so that helps the market, right? None of us panicked. And I think what we're seeing, and you know, the other thing too is when it first happened and people were taking salary decreases and people were getting furloughed, a lot of that stabilized now. People kind of know what to expect, and a lot of people weren't affected. You know, there were people that were, but there were still a lot who weren't, and some who have benefited in many ways. So what we're seeing, in my opinion, is just a delay in the market, and things are still pretty good and pretty stable.
Okay. What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, I would add that I think what happened during the pandemic time is kind of the December effect. That's what we talk about on our team. So, you know, when an exercise I do with a lot of clients is I ask them, what do you think the best month to sell your home is? Statistically, what's the best month? And a lot of the answers are April, May, and June. But if you look at the data, and I'm a huge data guy. I love collecting data. I love trying to interpret the data, trying to figure out where it goes. But if you look at the data for homes that are active versus homes that go pending for the month of December turns out to be the best month statistically to sell a home. The highest percent of homes go pending in the month of December. Why is that? It's because that the active inventory goes way down in December. And, you know, it's the whole people think you're not supposed to list over the holidays, so they don't. And that imbalance grows from, you know, we started with a seller's market and we have a lot less inventory. So that imbalance grows kind of artificially for the month of December. And I think that's what happened during the pandemic is a lot of people think you should not be listing a home. So they didn't, but the buyer pool didn't shift down at the same rate. So that imbalance actually grew, which made it more of a seller's market. I mean, it turned out to be one of the best periods in history for our team to sell houses.
Wow. What do you think, Tom?
Well, obviously it's quite evident we have a supply and demand issue. You know, there's just not enough inventory out there, and I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon, right? I mean, when we're seeing, you know, you list a home and you get 21 offers on it and it sells for $25,000 over list price. I haven't seen this kind of market since 2005, right? Where it becomes a feeding frenzy. Now, it's not in every market. You know, last week I'm down in the Central West End and running numbers on high-rise condos. It's obviously a buyer's market there. So it's not a one label. It's not a one size fits all. But, you know, something that Gary Keller has mentioned to us is, you know, they called our last recession the lost decade because there were probably 4 to 6 million homes that were never built and never will be built. So now we're seeing that in the supply issue.
And I think banks were holding off on releasing some of the properties into the market. We've noticed that in the short sale side of it. You know, there's an article in Forbes magazine that I sent along to everybody. It was June the 22nd, Forbes, and it talked about the housing. There's a wealth divide in the housing market that's even more pronounced than it has been. So that the haves, who are many of your buyers, have the resources to continue to want to buy the house that they want to buy because they need to have a house. And the shortened supply is making that market even more. Prices are going up in many segments, but in other segments of the market, I wonder how what's happening to those areas. The $125,000 and below, or even $150,000 or below. Is that a market that is the wealth divide evident to you?
Yeah, I would say for me, we don't see a lot of houses in that range, in that $125,000 or less. So the market for St. Charles, that's what I know best, St. Charles County. The market from 120, 150,000 up to 425 is where we start to see the decrease in months of or the increase in months of inventory. So from the up to 425, it is just a wonderful market. I mean, like Tom said, throw it on the market and count the offers and negotiate the best one you can. Above 425, the months of inventory start to increase, and you get up in the $700,000-800,000 range, and it gets tough. So it's a whole different market up there.
So the $1 million houses, how are they affected? $1 million and up.
So I think that that buyer pool tends to be a little more sophisticated. They tend to take their time a little bit more. And I think for me, what we're seeing is increased days on market, less showings. So from what we're experiencing on our team, we're seeing a tougher market at that price point.
Sarah, what do you think about that?
I agree 100%. That upper price point is tougher, no doubt about it. Chad's right. That middle range, 200,000 to 400,000 is, we can't even keep them on the market. The $1 million, that being said, we do a lot of second homes, a lot of vacation homes out of Innsbruck, and those are selling pretty well. We've got a pending sale of almost $2 million right now.
Wow.
That we sold during the pandemic, and it was sitting there for a while prior to that. But, it's always, the second home market has been pretty good. So that, kind of is contrary a little bit to what we're seeing here in town. But again, it's definitely a discrepancy in what people, the haves and the have-nots, as you said. So,
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that the two markets most affected by COVID are the first-time buyer market, because a lot of those are service workers, restaurants, waiters, cooks, whatever, and then the upper market. I think that sophisticated luxury buyer, they're making a lot of decisions based on stock portfolios and that sort of thing. So I would agree with Sarah and Chad that the resale luxury market, so I'm talking 750 and above, is certainly challenging. Yet, Krause Basler represents a luxury builder in Chesterfield at Peanut Farms. We're averaging 1.2 to 1.5 million, and we're booked into 2021.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's so much that price point, but the product. We're seeing that so-called downsizer spending at $1.5 million, but these are people moving out of their large, Chesterfield homes, and they just want a smaller home, but they want it loaded to the max. So now he can only build about 16, 18 homes a year, but we're already taking orders into 2021.
To Tom's point about the stock market, we've had a lot of calls, and you guys probably have too, from people that are rethinking where they're putting their money. And the real estate market is looking pretty stable compared to other financial markets. That's
very interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. How about, and are you seeing though, and we kind of touched on this earlier, price, in effect, bidding contests or bidding auction mentality on that middle segment of houses? Because I mentioned last month that I know a broker who said that he saw $250,000 homes in South County that they didn't sell it asking around 100. They sold it 180. Are we seeing that kind of price war?
That's a big percentage up from the list price. We're definitely seeing increased price appreciation. I know we're going to talk about builders lately. I think there's a little bit of a challenge, and I would say two different markets there as well, from the new construction versus existing. But on the existing side, I think we're seeing a lot of price appreciation. I've had more homes in the last 6 months not appraised for the purchase price because we sold well above list than I have in the 3 months prior to that, or 3 years prior to that. I mean, we're seeing more appraisal issues on our side than we have in a while.
Are any of you seeing any buyers who are an increase in buyers who aren't qualifying for the loans?
We had one right at the beginning, a luxury home buyer had to pull out because all of a sudden they didn't qualify for that loan because he was a part owner of a business and they had to take pay cuts across the board, and so he didn't have the income. So, but that was only one, and it was right at the beginning. But since then, I haven't experienced this at all.
How about you, Tom?
Yeah, same. We had someone that very first week of the shutdown was with Build-A-Bear, the buyer of one of our listings, and he was here on a work visa and pulled out during the inspection period because Build-A-Bear kind of shut down all their stores. But as far as qualifying now, not so much.
Yeah, and and we didn't there was a lot of uncertainty at the time, right in the end of March. People really didn't know what to do. People were nervous. I mean, we always we insist that our buyers get pre-approved. We've always done that. We still do that, so we're not running into situations at the last minute where all of a sudden, ooh, that loan isn't going to work out.
Interesting.
Now, I will add to that as the listing agent on our team, I'm going a lot more in depth on knowing what the buyer does. Could their job possibly be affected by COVID? I've called a few lenders personally who have returned my call just to say, hey, we got an offer, and can you kind of give me some assurance that this will close? So I'm making more of those calls than I ever have before.
Yeah, and I've watched that too. I think in some transactions I'm familiar with, the lender has been very careful. Their committees, their approval committees have been very careful to make sure that the person has an employment status that's going to skate through, and maybe a contract that's well backed, like you'd have in either a major company or a civil service or teaching position. So that's something I think people are really concerned about. And that leads me into the question of how the layoffs that we've seen reported in the newspaper, I'm thinking of the top 3 employers. We've got Mercy, we've got BJC, and we've got Wash U. They've all laid off in the thousands. Do you see any impact from that at all?
I see more delays. We've had a few situations with buyers who, especially in the second home market, who are thinking about buying a second home, and they've put their plans on hold because they've been laid off and they don't know when that's coming back. It's not huge, but absolutely it's affecting people's decisions.
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the companies you just mentioned there, a lot of that is probably our $400,000, $600,000 buyer or seller pool. And that's where I think what Sarah said, we're probably seeing some delays there. That lower end market, that $200,000 price point, while the buyers are out there, I think one of the reasons the inventory is so low is a lot of those $200,000 sellers are probably on pause. So not causing that inventory to show up. So therefore, they would probably be going up to 400 and, hey, take advantage of 2.75 interest rate. But some of those sellers might be on pause right now just to get through COVID.
I wonder, Chad, if there's a difference from being involved in the St. Charles market relative to the point of view about whether the COVID crisis is still on versus St. Louis County and city, where there's a lot more fear and government regulations that are preventing many businesses from perhaps coming back as quickly. Is it business as normal in St. Charles, or what's the difference in your mind, if there is one?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough question for me because I don't have the perspective of St. Louis County that maybe other people do because we're primarily St. Charles County. But, and you know, the people that you mentioned in the hospitals, a lot of those elective surgeries are on hold right now because of COVID. So I think that's a huge portion for certainly in the medical industry where they're just not seeing people. And
Right.
so I don't feel that in St. Charles County as much. I mean, we've had a banner year. We're still having record years for us, and we haven't seen the negative response to the market at all due to COVID. We've seen an increase in business. Not what we expected, but that's what's happened.
I don't think that this market was what anybody would have expected.
Yeah.
In thinking about when it first happened, everybody, I think, was pretty darn unsettled,
Yeah.
didn't know what to expect. But actually, from the standpoint of the supply demand, it's working out. At least the market is strong, and and those who have good, we'll talk about this later, those who have good marketing systems are staying ahead of it and doing well. Dan, I'm going to ask you a question because even though you're not a real estate agent, you are insuring so many houses. You told me some time ago that you did see a dip in your home insurance business earlier on in the pandemic.
It was about
I'm sensing it's picked up back again to some
it was
extent.
about 3 to 5 days, Barry.
Oh, just 3 to 5. Okay.
Long enough for me to think, maybe next week I'll do a lot of fishing and enjoy the little bit of a break. And then the phone started ringing, and the typical spring and summer late hours started
So
happening again.
it's continuing strong for you.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
excellent.
So yeah, and
That's
then
excellent.
Sarah was talking about the second home buyers. That's what I've seen is the biggest thing. That the things I expect in spring and summer are absolutely happening. And the second home buyers are crazy right now. Every day I'm getting a second home buyer calling and saying I'm selling one, buying one. But the second home market is on fire.
So are there one of the big reasons for the demand, I'm sorry, for the supply being so constrained has been sellers reluctant to have people tramping through their houses or going through their houses. I know in our business in short sales, we've got a number of folks whose hardship is they're older and they've had a recent serious operation or illness. And so they're unwilling to have anybody near their house, even though they know they have to go and do a short sale. And once forbearance is over, they're going to have to deal with it. Is it still, am I picking up that forbearance is still low, shortening the available houses out there? That there's fewer houses because of forbearance that are on the market? And maybe that's maybe that's just a self-evident question, but is the forbearance, people are not selling, they're just simply holding back and they're not paying their mortgage, and it may go on into the fall. There's talk that it could be extended, and it could be extended through Christmas into January. But do you feel there's any impact on the markets you deal in that forbearance is a factor?
For me, I haven't seen any data that supports either way. So for me, I can't really give a good answer on that one.
And you're in the market that maybe all of you are in the market that really isn't affected by this.
Well, I think we wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, there's always going to be people that are thinking about selling their home, and they might decide to wait until next year, and they may not say. I mean, it's going to be probably for economic reasons or uncertainty that I talked about earlier about where are we going? Are kids going back to school? Are they not going back to school? Is it a good time for us to make a move just as a family? So I think and it could, whether or not forbearance plays into that, I don't know that we would necessarily know that, but I would certainly think if someone's in forbearance, they're going to not be putting their house in the market.
Right. Tom, are you still with us? I saw that you may have dropped off. Are you there?
He dropped off for a second. I'll get him back on when he
Okay,
gets
fine.
back on.
So let's so we've really noted that there's a move to the suburbs or to even the country. You read about New York and people moving out to Connecticut, Long Island, and New Jersey, and so on. And we're seeing in St. Louis, what I'm hearing from all of you is that, and particularly from you, Sarah, is that there's people either getting second homes or maybe moving farther out, and that's part of the activity that's going on. Is that something that we can say is a definite factor?
I think we're seeing absolutely New York. There's a huge trend moving out of those high rises into the suburbs. It's safer. It's what's available right now in New York is so limited for people in terms of culture, and that could go on for a long time. So we're seeing that there, and we always see trends start on the coast, right?
Right.
And definitely seeing it here. We had a client who had a home. She had two homes, a home in Creve Coeur and a home at Innsbruck. Sold both of those, bought a bigger home at Innsbruck, a permanent home. So they moved out of their permanent home in Creve Coeur. And the reason was, if we're going to be working from home for a long time, we might as well be looking at a lake and every single day and not just on the weekends. So we're seeing that. I did that. I moved out of a high rise in Clayton to a villa in Chesterfield for exactly that reason, because I got a lot more space. I've got people living with me that aren't supposed to be there, and that's okay. We just need more space. So, and I'm sure there's a lot more of me's out there. So I think we are seeing that.
Tom kind of alluded to this also, but are we seeing then a potential, maybe a growing problem on the city and Clayton through Central West End markets for housing maybe being harder to sell?
I'll let Tom or Sarah answer that one.
Houses in Clayton, well, there's houses and there's high rises and there's condos, and I don't really think I have enough data to really to talk about that intelligently. I know I was living in a high rise. A lot of people in my building left, a lot of people, and moved into bigger spaces, but some of them stayed in Clayton, so it's not that they were necessarily moving like I did to Chesterfield, but they're, whether or not it's going to be harder to sell that high rise condo, I think I personally don't have enough data to talk about that. I still see homes in Clayton selling fairly quickly. There's always going to be demand and limited supply. I don't see that changing, but I do think what we were talking about earlier with just the price point is going to be the biggest factor in selling those, those high price homes. It might just take a little bit longer.
Are you concerned at all? Oh, there you are, Tom. Glad you're back. You're on mute though, by the way. I want to get you off mute. Tom, we're just talking about the markets in the Clayton, Central West End, and City, primarily high-rise condominiums, but even houses. And is this situation causing that market to be harder to sell?
Yeah, I think it's probably price point related as well. Yeah, I think it's probably more related to the demographic of that buyer,
Okay.
Who's probably just a little more cautious or so. Some of those high-rise condos, listed 225, but the condo fees are $700 a month. So, it's not a 225 buyer. So they're probably a little more savvy and cautious on their moves.
And do the riots or protesting, but it sometimes devolved into riots, is that having any effect on the markets that I've just talked about, the City, Central West End, and Clayton markets?
We're not seeing it.
You're not either, Sarah?
In those, no, not at all.
Okay.
But I don't work in the downtown market. It could be affecting the downtown market. I don't know if any of you guys do, but.
Yeah, the downtown, we got several of our buyers agents that have been in the downtown loft area, and that market's just simply so saturated.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what the price point is, there's probably 25 units to choose from at any one time. So that's more of a market saturation issue than
Oversupply.
Yeah, just oversupply. Right.
Mm.
Let's move on into the questions that I have about home builders and what they are looking ahead to do and what they're experiencing currently. And I know that Chad, you've got a really good light window into that community in the St. Charles market. Can you tell us what are the plans and expectations and strategies of home builders that you work with or know of?
You know, I think they're as confused as we were in the beginning too on what the market's going to do, and obviously jobs is going to determine what happens. But you know, with home builders, it's a lot about their land positions. How far out do they have land? Do they have it out 3 years, 4 years, 7 years? And I think the builders. So right now, I think what you're also seeing is there is a on the existing homes, we're seeing an appreciation push. Prices are moving up. I think on the new construction, it's just the opposite. You're starting to see in St. Charles County some of that downward pressure that the market is more favoring right now, the existing home market. And that way you're seeing less price increases out of builders. You're seeing more incentives. So they're trying to get the sales that I think the confidence level, I don't know why, but the confidence level in new construction seems to be less than buying an existing home. So you're seeing kind of two different markets, that appreciation rate in new homes is coming down and the appreciation rate in existing homes is going up. So I think builders are a little concerned right now what's going to happen. I think if you're a builder who is short on land right now, there's a big concern, you know, how much do you want to spend to buy the land right now when you think the land is at the top of the market? And I mean, I think most of the builders are expecting a downturn at some point. So how much of a position do you take in land right now? I mean, I think that's the challenge that the builders are facing right now.
Are there plans going forward for the next 12 months?
No, I think a lot of them have slowed down. I think they've
Yeah.
slowed down their land purchases. They've either not gone through with them or they're putting them on hold. You know, there's some, you know, a lot of the subdivisions where they're building, the municipalities shut down and wouldn't go out and do their occupancy inspections or permitting that they need to do. So if they can't do that work, the builders don't want to hold on to a piece of ground where they can't process it and move it and build on it. So
And
that's been a challenge.
And to add to that too, I think this speaks to what's going on in our country and in our culture, that people cannot plan ahead right now. And you know, when you commit to a custom home, you have to have the ability to plan out 9, 10, 12 months as a buyer. And we don't know what's gonna be happening. And also to sell their current home. Right now, it's a great time to sell. What's it going to look like in 6, 9 months? You know, we think it's going to probably be fine and stable, but the buyers and sellers may not have that same level of confidence.
Tom, what do you think? You do some work with major builders.
Yeah, I think they're getting a lot of pressure because it costs a lot more to build a home now than it did. You know, their material costs have skyrocketed in some cases, whether it be drywall, plumbing, whatever. That's what we're hearing. So therefore, you know, we had a situation last week. I heard of a buyer that started working with one of our builders last year and then said, okay, great, but I want the price that we first quoted. And he's like, there's no way in heck I can do that. You know, I can't support that number anymore. So I think that's some of it. And yeah, like Chad said, just, you know, the land acquisition cost is huge for these guys. I mean, all real estate is driven by the land it sits on, right? If it can be purchased at the low end, obviously their margins are squeezed more and more every day. So I think, and again, that just pours into the fact that not enough homes are being built, and new construction inventory keeps resale inventory prices in check. And when that is low, then obviously it's forcing up resale prices. And a word that you mentioned earlier, Barry, and it's something I talked to our team about, I'm not using the word strong market, I'm using the word fast market. You know, strong real estate market is units sold. You know, we haven't seen 5 million homes sold in the US in quite a few years. So really the health of real estate, I think is driven by how many homes are being sold and not the price. And the prices are just being forced to go up because there's no inventory. So therefore it's just creating a really fast market right now.
Chad, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I haven't heard that term before, but I think I might start copying it and use it. I like that. It's a fast market, and that's exactly true.
So let's break it down into segments, though. We know builders that would want to build a home in the, is it just the same as it would be if it were existing homes relative to perspective on market price segments? So the homes in that 200 to 400 range that's where you might feel most confident as a builder in building that product. But if you're a builder that wants to build homes in the 400 or 500 on up to $1 million, are you very uncomfortable buying land for that product? Or should
That's a great question. I'm not sure I can speak intelligently to that one. I think, for St. Charles County, at least, the main builders are McBride, Payne, McKelvey, Lombardo. Those are the main ones. And they build different products. And I think that each one of those builders has a different piece of land that they're looking for. One builder may focus on that $300,000 market, where another one might be in the 500 plus, and that's different land pieces they're looking for. And they're looking for topography and the land development cost is huge for these guys. How much it's going to take to fix it, how much clay soil's in there, what's it going to cost to get the sewers and the electric and all that stuff in place to build. So there's just a lot of that stuff going on for them.
Tom,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think a lot of these builders, maybe not a McBride, but a lot of these builders, they're going to investors to buy that land. So the investors are a lot more cautious, I think, on how the money's distributed. So I think that has an impact. And that luxury market, my perspective working with the luxury builder we do, is that luxury buyer now is not so much, I need 5,000 square feet, but it's more, I need 3,200 square feet, but I want everything in it.
Want it really tricked out.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing a trend toward home offices now are something that's a lot more popular than before. Maybe they would build an extra bedroom thinking that was better for resale. And now you're seeing the trend to, let's just make it a home office. We won't put the closet in there. Let's deck it out for a home office because we're working from home. And I think you're going to see, I do think COVID may change the way that builders design their homes.
Totally agree.
Fascinating. That's great. The next segment of our program is to talk about how realtors can, in a sense, survive and thrive. With the constraints of supply, the availability of product to whether it's new or resale, it's shrinking or has been. The COVID thing shrunk it even more. And is there going to be a shrinking, and this may be something you guys don't even think about, but is there going to be a winnowing out in the agent pool as far as, and I want to talk about what you're doing in terms of your systems and your marketing approach to maintain your business, to keep it moving forward. But for someone who is coming into the business new, or has been in it for a short while and really still kind of trying to get their bearings, the last Great Recession, we saw a major drop in numbers of agents, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was in the several thousands. It was huge.
We lost nearly 50% on the St. Louis board.
50% drop.
We were about 13,000 agents down to 7,500, I think.
Yeah. And what are we at now? Do you know?
It's about back up to that 13, 14 number.
Okay. So the question is, what's going to go on with the agent side? If there's less supply, that means there's less deals to go around.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not. I'm willing to be totally overruled on that, but I want to raise the question. What's going on in that respect, and what can agents do to be part of the game and survive?
Well, just as in any business, the people that are going to be successful are the ones who show up every day, who have systems, who have a business plan, who get back to the basics, who make those phone calls. If you're an agent, whether it's right now or a year ago, and you're waiting for that business to come to you, you're not going to be successful. So it doesn't really matter what's happening in our world, in our economy, if you don't have that business plan and those good systems in place from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that the key on what can you do to protect yourself is, number one, know your numbers, right? You have got to understand where your revenue is coming from, and you have to understand where your expenses are going out. Because we talk a lot about volume as real estate agents, but you can't spend volume, and volume's not going to pay your bills. So it really doesn't matter. What matters is how much you have saved at the end of the day, how much you're making. So you can make more money doing less deals, and just don't, when you go into a tough market like this, don't overspend. Make sure you know where all your money's going, and track it close and understand what you need to track. Spend some time focusing on the data that you want to collect so you can interpret it correctly, and make sure that you are spending appropriately. This is not necessarily a time to take chances with money, but you got to batten down the hatches when you see what's coming down the pipe. You just got to control it. So
you're speaking earlier, you say what's coming down the pike. You're speaking to the uncertainty, even
Right.
though this has been a pretty good time for you all. Tom, what would you add and say to the idea of, and I'll throw this in before you speak. One thought that occurs to me is that a new agent might want to affiliate themselves with any of the three of you or others to become a buyer's agent or a listing agent, as a way to develop some great experience and become part of a team. So let me let you speak to this whole question, Tom.
Yeah, to summarize it, I think it's wise to you're either building a team or you're on a team. And to what Chad said, I was an engineer by trade before real estate, so I'm very analytical as well. And if you're not operating off a monthly P&L, you're winging it. Our team studies our P&Ls. We have a P&L meeting at the end of every month, and we go over our numbers, because we may have months where our GCI is not as good as the previous month or not as high, but our net ROI, our net operating income is higher because of expense control. That's the first thing we did when COVID hit, is did some major expense control. That's the one thing we could control. So, we cut out huge amounts of money. That was just when things are good, it's real easy to just, yeah, let's do that, because the money's coming in and you don't realize all those that's that add up. So, if any advice for a new agent is, you got to treat this as a business now. I don't think there's the part-time, let's sell 5 houses a year, and I'll do it on the side sort of thing. I think you're a huge liability at that point because of just all the contract law changes and things that are going on in our industry.
Yeah,
So
and
all three, I'm sorry, Sarah, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
add to your point of the team. I have a team. My team has grown during the pandemic. We're hiring right now. It's actually a great time to hire because there's a lot of good people out of work, and we've picked up some awesome people. And there's a lot of value in being on a team that has systems in place, that has coaching built in, that has a marketing budget, that will guide you through this. And so an agent that really wants to make a career out of this, don't feel that you have to do it alone, because, and a lot of agents I think are attracted to this business because they want to control it all. They're entrepreneurs and they don't want to work with other people, or they tried the corporate world and they didn't like it or whatever. But there's a lot of, a good team has a mix of flexibility, but great systems too. And so I agree with you on that.
So we're all in agreement that if a new agent came to us and said, I don't really know what the heck I'm doing, but I sure like the real estate business. What do I do? You would encourage them to find a team to work with for a period of time, perhaps several years. Serve it well, get experience, and then, make some decisions down the road about the next path you have. Is everybody agreed on that?
Or get great, start their own team, but there's power in numbers, absolutely. So it depends on the person and what they're looking for. Most brokerages provide great training. Take advantage of all of that for sure.
Accountability, though, is such a big part of any person's business. And at least with the team, you've got accountability that is built into the whole concept.
The other
Another thing I would say is you need to look for what skill sets you're good at, right? So there's opportunities out there that are kind of on the peripheral of the real estate stuff. You may not just be an agent, but there's other things you can do. For example, we just started a rehab division, just closed on our first one. I used to do rehabs back in the day, but I haven't done them in a while. But now with this market, the way it's coming, I do think we may see some more opportunities to do those. So we're looking to build that line of business as well. We also just started doing some commercial deals. We hadn't done those in the past. So I'd say look for opportunities that you may not traditionally think about and see if they fit your skill sets.
Yeah, so, and I 100% agree with that. And having more than one pillar of income or stream of income within the industry is a great way to survive the tough times. We have a vacation rental property management business that totally got us through the spring when real estate dropped off and thrived. And until real estate came back up, had we not had that, it would have been a tough couple of months. So I agree with Chad 100%. Look for other ways to diversify while staying true to your skill set and staying within the industry.
Tom?
Yeah, the first thing that we do, and it's offered by Keller Williams, is we have our personality profile test. It's called the KPA, and Keller Williams designed one specific to our business model, and it tells you how you're hardwired. The worst thing that can happen is you take a really talented person and put them in the wrong role, and they get stressed out and quit, right? I mean, it's the whole reason Dawn and I formed Krause Basler Network is to become a team of specialists. And it's, as our volume grows, I do less and less things. I just stay in my lane. There's some things I can do, but I should not be the one doing them.
Right.
Because I'm not that efficient at it, but I can work my way through it. And that's the challenge I see with new agents is their mindset is, well, I don't want to join a team and give up my, and give up a split, yet they're trying to do everything. And
Right.
It's like opening a restaurant and being the cook and the waiter and the cashier and ordering the food and all of that.
That's right.
Good.
Burn
We've
out.
got just a few minutes because I know several of our panelists actually have to drop off right at the top of the hour to go on to another meeting or Zoom call. So I'd like to see if Dan could give us a couple of questions that stand out.
Yeah, so we had, thanks, Barry. We had a question last time and it came back again. What about the outskirts markets? So, Sarah, I know you're in Wright City quite a bit in Innsbruck, but what about Imperial, regular Wright City, Warrenton, Washington, Missouri, and Imperial? Are people looking to kind of leave St. Louis, St. Charles County and step out a little bit further now with the new environment?
Well, I think right now the issue part of it is lack of inventory. So people are going outside of their boundaries, just to buy a house. I have a listing in Imperial right now, since you mentioned that, and we had people looking at it from Kirkwood and Webster because they couldn't find a place in Kirkwood or Webster, so they maybe wouldn't typically have gone there, but now they are. As far as we do a lot of business, absolutely, in Warren County, but it's pretty much Innsbruck Resort, which is mostly second homes. I mean, I did give the example of somebody who just moved out there for the beautiful setting so they could office from home looking out at a lake. So we're seeing that, but it's more the second home market.
Okay. How about you, Chad? Any
No.
observation of people moving farther out?
You know, Tom said stay in your lane. Our lane is St. Charles County, and we don't do a ton of business outside of that. We get into Warren County a little bit, Lincoln County a little bit, but we're not seeing, from our perspective, a big push there. I think we're seeing people coming from St. Louis County into St. Charles County. We're seeing a lot of that, but I don't really have a ton of perspective on the peripheral markets outside of St. Charles County.
People are going where they can get value for their dollar right now too, and that might mean going a little further out than where they had planned. I'm an example of that. I moved to West County.
Tom, any adds to this?
No, our team's pretty diverse with where our agents work. We have a couple of agents that focus on Jefferson County. They're very busy down there, but it's not a result of, hey, because of COVID, I'm probably going to work from home, so therefore I want to move out. So we're not seeing that effect yet.
Time for one more brief question. Dan, can you see that there's one there that could be answered?
Yeah, so one of them Chad already answered, and it's what I've seen also is rehabs. So rehabs have been just a hot market. You know, if you can create some new inventory, you're going to be able to sell it if it's in a good price point, good location. What about the $1 million houses? Are you seeing appreciation there, depreciation, or just right house, right client showing up for that?
So I'll speak to that because I study patterns, appreciation, depreciation over time. That for the West County luxury market, the price hasn't changed in 10 years. I'm just giving a very broad, it's been pretty flat. There has been very little appreciation in that upper end luxury market.
Okay.
That I work. Now I don't do a lot of Clayton and in, but for the most part, what homes sold for 10 years ago is about what they're going for today.
Sarah?
I don't
Sarah, you want to add?
I don't have a lot of data to substantiate a response to that, but I would agree with what Tom just said from what we're seeing.
Great.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank everybody on the panel. You've been tremendous today. You've all got such great business records going on in your own respective companies and organizations, and for you to take some time with us today is greatly appreciated, not only by me, but I'm sure by the many people who are on the call. And I want to thank Dan Luig for getting this sort of organized from the back office standpoint. You're a great friend, a tremendous insurance agent, and we're glad that you're working with us.
Thanks, Barry.
The call has been recorded. For those of you who know someone who says, darn it, I couldn't get on, they can go to our website, www.therealestatecollaborative.com, and they can play it in the middle of the night if they want to. So this is be memorialized forever. And I want to, again, thank everybody so much for being with us. And one added comment, you mentioned commercial. We are starting the Commercial Real Estate Collaborative this fall for the commercial market, because that's a whole different market right now, and it needs some sunshine that perhaps shone into it. And we're excited about having an opportunity to do the Commercial Real Estate Collaborative starting this fall. And if any of you who are listening or any of the panelists who would like to make suggestions or have ideas about that, I'd be very happy to receive them. So again, thanks everybody for being with us today, and God bless. Have a great month until we meet again August the 13th.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks so much.